All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Monday, May 24th. It is 12:39 here in San Diego, California. And guys, this is like a dream come true right here. I have UFC legend, the karate hottie herself, Michelle Waterson, is gracing us with her presence. Michelle, thank you so much. Like, this just means more than you would even ever understand. Thank you.
Oh, no, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to ask me some questions. So let's do it. Let's get into it.
So, Michelle, a little bit of a heads up here. We've actually met before.
Okay.
We've met before, and you spoke to Gary V for his company.
Oh, great.
And I was the guy in the comments freaking the hell out. And then Gary's like, all right, let's get Bo out here. And so I was on screen and I was talking to you and Gary. So that was a pretty bizarre day for me, pretty incredible. But we had met before, and I had to let you know. I've been pulling for you ever since.
Oh, thank you. And that's great. I do. Now that you say that, I'm glad that you reminded me because I do remember that very specifically.
Yeah, well, and we talked about, we just talked about like people we admire as teammates, and we talked about you're like, oh, John, if you say go work on the jab, he will go at the bag for an hour and just work on the jab, and you were like, that's just something I really admire. So that was my question. I wanted to let you know before we got started that we had met before, and I'd been pulling for you ever since. So the last few weeks, like, obviously bummer of results, right? Like, you never want to, add a loss to the record, but I gotta say, as a fan, that was a fucking fight, and that was badass to watch, and you brought it, and you performed brilliantly, and that's one of the coolest things about MMA is, like, these losses can be lessons, and you can still go out and perform and fight with like pride and bravery. And it was awesome to watch. I wanted to let you know, like, wow, as a fan, that is as good as it gets for us. So thank you for the performance.
Well, thank you. I think just kind of looking back and reflecting on everything. Obviously, like you said, it is a disappointment. Nobody wants to have a loss. But when I look at it in the bigger scheme of things, I think about it as momentum forward. For me, it was a huge challenge. It was a huge risk to take a fight on 1 week's notice, and let alone, against somebody who was on the rise, who was ranked above me, who for the main event, and for me, that was a challenge that I wanted to accept, challenge that I wanted to embrace, and I feel that I did that. I remember talking to one of my friends after the fight, and he was like, man, everybody at the gym calls me Peanut, but he's just like, man, Peanut, if there were still pride rules, you would kick butt because you just go and go and go. And so for me, it was even though it was a fall, it was still a fall forward for me, accepting that challenge. I don't know when the last time it was for myself that I accepted that short of a notice fight, and I felt great. I felt strong. I felt that I had moments, there were moments that I could have won, and
Absolutely.
those moments slipped through my fingers, and I think it's just something that I can take with myself moving forward in my career, and I think about it like in the sense of life skills, right? When I think about um, all the greats, anybody that has ever been successful, they've probably failed more than they have succeeded. The only difference with their failures is that, they can erase them. People don't remember their failures because, they come back with a win, and it might take them 100 failures, but the win is the one that counts. But for a fighter, your failures follow you because it's on your record.
Well, Floyd Mayweather will talk about being 50-0 as a professional boxer. And he
Mhm.
says, the only reason I'm 50-0 is because of the losses I have in the training room and in the gym. Without those lessons, the 50-0 does not happen. That it's impossible. You don't just cruise your way through like life with sunshine and rainbows. I mean, the adversity is what makes the champion. So 1010%. I wanted to ask you kind of like a specific like MMA question about the fight, because the takedown, I think in round 4, right? I mean, like, it completely changed the momentum of the fight, completely like flipped the landscape of it. And I was curious, like, when you're doing those 5-round fights, especially on short notice, on 5-6 days or whatever, like, did you think, all right, use my, my game for the first few rounds and then look for an opportunity late? And you kind of saw it with like Jan Blachowicz against Adesanya. It was like, all right, let's fight for a little bit, and then if I can capitalize on a takedown, it might work. Or is that a spur of the moment? You just kind of felt it and you trusted your instinct to go for it?
I think the game plan all along was to take her down. But she was savvy to it. She was hip to it, and she knew she didn't want to get taken down because that's not where she's comfortable. And so it was just a little harder to take her down at the beginning of the fight because obviously she's fresher, she's bigger, she's longer. But for sure, if I were to do it all over again, I think I would commit a little bit harder earlier on for that shot, and then even following through, even with the failed takedowns, trying to chain it through so that I would secure those. And then even when I had her down, I think that I had 3 minutes to work, and I don't think that I used those 3 minutes as efficiently as I could have.
So when you, whether a win or a loss, like, it doesn't matter per se, but like, how long does it take you to decompress and then like decide like, oh, I want to get back in there, or, what, let's take a break. Like, soccer season's coming up for your daughter, whatever. How long does that take you to decide what the next move is?
Well, we're always training, and
Yeah.
so that's never going to be like a factor. But for sure, there are a lot of other factors that go into it. What's the landscape look like with the division? What fights are scheduled ahead of us? What are the names that the UFC is throwing out to me? Do I have anything, down the pipeline outside of MMA? So those are all just, the questions that we kind of look at. But, always training, getting back to the gym, figuring out, kind of breaking things down, figuring out what it is that I need to do to improve. What things do I need to add? What things do I need to keep? What things I need to take out? Those are all the things that we work on after a fight.
What is your favorite meal at Hooters?
I mean, I love it all. It really depends on the mood that I'm in. I would say I would get the fried shrimp, but I would just get them naked, which means no sauce on them. And I would get the sauce on the side, because if you get the sauce on the side, then it stays crispy. So I would get the, I forgot what it's called. I think it's called 311, or like the one above hot, but not the hottest. I would get that, and I would mix it with ranch, and then dip my shrimp, my fried shrimp in that. And that was kind of like something that I crave every now and then.
That's a good pro tip. I had to ask, of course. So, as you've been in the game for, as long as you have, and you've dedicated really so much of your life to this, how much does the recovery process like change as you went from before being a mom to after being a mom to now, where like, you've had time to acclimate to your body or whatever? How has the recovery process changed as your time in mixed martial arts has?
I think understanding consistency is key, and also understanding that, I'm not youthful anymore. I mean, I guess consider all things considered, I'm still, pretty healthy, and I would say that I am still in my prime, but I'm not, I'm not in my 20s where I can, go to McDonald's and grab, a value meal, then go train, and then afterwards go grab a Philly cheesesteak and it'll be good. It's not all good.
It's not all good.
It's not all good. So definitely I understand recovery way more. We have so many things, in our home gym and in our home, and specifically just for recovery, because we've just kind of come to understand how important recovery is. A lot of MMA fighters overtrain because there's so much to learn. There's so much that encompasses MMA. So it's, it's wrestling, it's kickboxing, it's cage work, it's groundwork, it's jujitsu, it's Muay Thai, it's boxing, it's judo, and there's so many things to learn. And on top of that, you have to have conditioning, and on top of that, you have to be mentally sharp. And so a lot of MMA fighters end up overtraining because there's just so much to learn. And one thing to combat the training is recovery. When you put as much time into recovery as you do into training, then you're able to reap the rewards from training. If you don't give yourself the amount of time to recover, your body doesn't absorb the training and your brain doesn't absorb the training. So for me, we have a sauna. We have an infrared sauna. We also have a cold plunge. We have a hyperbaric chamber, and we just got a Uller, which is super cool. It's like a chill pad that you put on like the top of your bed that kind of regulates your temperature when you go to sleep and allows you to get better REM and deep sleep. And so we have all our bases covered when it comes to recovery because we understand how important it is.
That might have been me, but that's I've never heard of the last one. Obviously, the hyperbaric chamber has become incredibly popular over time. I'm still in the phase of my life where I'm doing the McDonald's type deal, value meal. Like we're still there. I'm only 24, so we're still a consistent diet of McDonald's. But you're talking about the overtraining for MMA fighters, and I really think it's almost like, in a weird way, anxiety induced, because you're constantly thinking like, oh, they're training. Like, everyone else in the top 10, they're training right now. I need to go train. And so it's like almost an insecurity thing that like, oh, I need to constantly be doing something, when in the reality is like your body is your tool in this scenario, in this career. And if you're not taking proper care of it, it could really do some serious damage. You have an incredible open relationship with your daughter about your fighting career, right? She's at all your fights. And that's rare. Like that, most people, that's not the case. But I wanted to ask a hypothetical, and I thought this would really tell a lot about you and your daughter. If you wiped your daughter's memory clean of every fight that she's ever seen from you, and you could only pick one fight for her to watch, which fight would it be?
That's a good question. And it's hard because I've learned something different from each one of my fights. But I think that the biggest, most heartbreaking fight that she had witnessed was when I lost the belt at Invicta. I was on top of the world, and she saw me fall, and I fell hard. I lost the belt. It wasn't a decision. I got submitted. My eye was blown up, and she was at that age where she couldn't understand what was going on. She just kind of was like staring at me. She didn't know how to feel about the situation. And I think I'm not sure if it's something that she'll carry with her forever, but it's definitely something I'll carry with me forever, because in that moment, I wanted to be selfish, and I wanted to be pissed, and I wanted to cry, and I wanted to be upset that I lost the belt. And I couldn't be any of those things because my daughter was there and she was watching me. And I had to be truthful with her in my feelings. And I remember her sitting on my lap, and she's staring at me, looking at my eye that was, shut, and just kind of confused. And I had to tell her, I just was honest with her. I said, Mommy's okay. I told her, I might look bad, but I'm okay. I said, my heart hurts worse than anything else. And I hate that I lost, but that happens sometimes. And you can't, dwell on it, is what I told her. We'll go back to the gym, we'll work on things, we'll get better, and we'll go back and try it again. And so I really had to swallow like my selfishness, or me wanting to be selfish in that moment, and me wanting to dwell in my sorrow, me wanting to feel sorry for myself. I had to, brush all of that off, and and be the bigger person for not only for myself but for my daughter. And I thought that was a great life lesson for her to see real time.
So I watched that fight this weekend, and I saw the footage with you and your daughter after. And yeah, I was like crying this morning watching it. So I can imagine why, you get emotional just thinking about it or talking about it. But when I was coming up with this question, I actually kind of had a gut feeling you were going to say a loss. I had a feeling it wasn't going to be like your most spectacular win, or it wasn't going to be your easiest win necessarily per se, because those aren't the same thing either. Spectacular and easy can be different things. And I had a feeling that you were going to say it would be a loss, that, whether it would be adversity or toughness that you had to go through. I don't know what it was about that footage backstage, but she understood enough. She understood enough that you were going through pain in some variety, and it was pretty special to see. Thank you for sharing that. I really did appreciate that.
And it's crazy is that we almost didn't let the camera crew back because it was such a personal moment, But
you don't regret it at all, letting him backstage?
No, not at all. A lot of my life, I'm pretty open because I feel like too many people shield the things, they sugarcoat their life. Too many people only put out what they want to put out in life. You know what I mean? And it gives people a false sense of what it is to be successful, what it is to be a fighter, what it is to be on top, what it is, you know what I mean? And I think when people go to strive for those things and they hit a wall, they're lost, they're confused, they're like, wait, this isn't how it's supposed to be. But in all reality, it really is. Like, you're going to be digging for a long time before you hit success. And if you think it's anything other than that, then you either have made your goal too small of a goal, or you're going to be in for a rude awakening.
And I get that. So, and it almost kind of sounds like we were talking about social media in some capacity, right? Like, people post things that look great all the time, and there's never anything negative. In your career, you've done just a great job with your social media handles and marketing and branding, and it's incredible to see. But you've also managed it from like a mental health perspective too. You're very open and free to do things, and it seems like you're posting things that you're comfortable posting. How do you set those boundaries of like taking the interview from me today, right? Like, you're a mom, you're a fighter, you have plenty of things going on. You don't have to do this at all, right? But you do. How do you kind of balance setting boundaries versus like, this is what it's like to be a prominent, star in the UFC? How do you balance all of that?
I think a lot of it has to do with mental strength, and understanding that that's part of what comes with being in the spotlight. Is people, at the end of the day, I fight, and it is very personal for me because it is my life on the line, and I don't think that is as much of reality for other people until they see things like people getting knocked out and not getting up after 10 minutes, or like Weidman, going in for a kick and snapping his leg in half, and it might being changing the trajectory of not only his career but his life, and people don't really see that aspect of a fighter's life until little things like that happen. And so I think I've been fighting for long enough to where I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm confident with who I am as a person. I'm confident with who I am as a fighter. I know what it's taken for me to get here, and a lot of the times those keyboard warriors, those trolls, that's all they are. And I've reached a point to where I kind of wonder what it is that they're doing in their lives that gives them enough free time to comment on what I'm doing in mine. Because I know for damn sure I don't have enough time in my life to stalk somebody else to the point where I feel the need to go into their comment section and say something. I mean, and that's just not the way I was raised. I was raised to, you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. But it's just, how I look at it is the noise. And whether it's on social media, whether it's, you know, in the workplace, whether it's at school, whether it's in your own mind, there is always going to be that noise that you don't want to be there. And the noise that's in your mind can be the loudest noise. And if you can conquer those noises in your mind, I think everything else is kind of, you know, um, it becomes easy. You know what I mean? The noises in my mind is probably the loudest. And I think sometimes what ends up happening is the noise on the outside can amplify the noises that you have on the inside. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think for each individual, it's important to keep your own sanity. And if there's something that is, you know, taking you off the tracks of your how confident you are in your body, how much you love your own self, how much you love your passion and your trajectory of where you're going. If there's something that's taking you offline, then you need to figure out how to eliminate that.
You know, I can't even imagine, honestly, like what you go through in terms of that stuff, because I'm a nobody who no one knows, and I feel those comments. And then these are people that don't have any idea. So I can't imagine, you know, what you go through. And for 90% of the days, it's totally fine. I'm like, well, it's nothing. Like, I'm not dealing. And then there's that one day, the one day every 3 weeks or whatever, every 2 weeks, every month, where it's just like, damn, that really sucked. Like, it sucked reading it and it hurt reading it. Do you, this isn't even necessarily fighting related, just like, what's your advice on those days where it does hit? Like, it's so easy to say, oh, don't worry about it. But when it is about you, it does hurt and it does sting. What do you kind of do on those days?
I think you can allow yourself to separate a little bit, you know, separate yourself from the situation. And really, I think the reason why they hurt is because, like I said, is it aligns with the those demons that you have in your own mind. So it almost makes you feel like it's a reassuring thought. It's a reassuring negative thought. So then you're like, dang, I'm not the only one thinking it, you know? And so it's just like in fighting. When I talk with my sports psychologist, it's like you're getting ready to fight, and they show the highlight of your opponent, and then you start freaking out. Then your butterflies kick in, you start sweating up your neck, and then you're like, oh shit, what if she knocks me out? What if this? You know, what if, you know, the whole world sees me lose and fall on my face? And you can what if the situation to death, or you can problem solve it in your head. And that's just what I do, both with the fight and with any negative thoughts. You know, if there's a negative thought that impacts me enough to where it hurts my heart, it makes me want to, you know, shut the door, cancel social media, go cry in my bed for the rest of the weekend. If it hurts that bad, then there's some introspective work that I have to do on myself. You know, I look at the comment, why does it hurt that bad? And problem solve through it. You know, do I
Well,
have these insecurities? Do I have these problems? And if I do, let's erase them. You know, and just mentally taking an eraser, literally erasing the comment, erasing the thought in your mind. You know, writing it on a piece of paper and literally burning it and watching it disintegrate. Those things will help. And you just have to. I mean, it's a story I tell people all the time. There's two dogs in your mind. You know, there's a good dog and a bad dog, and it's an old native tale. And he said they're always battling, these two dogs. You know, one, you know, he's the dark dog, and he's full of envy, he's full of hate, he's full of jealousy, he's full of doubt, he's full of fear. And the other guy, the other dog, he's the light dog, you know, and he's full of joy and happiness and encouragement and bravery, you know. And then the little kid goes, well, what dog wins if they're always fighting? And he said, the one that you feed.
wow. I love that. That's really, really cool. Is that from Thailand?
No, it's a Native American,
Wow.
like story, and I love
That's
it. It's
awesome.
true. It's a dogfight in your mind.
Yeah.
And honestly, you'll always have both sides. There's no way you can only have one. It's a yin and yang. It's a balance. You have to have both, dark and light. Day and night.
So speaking of bullies, I grew up in the like a little bit of the MTV era, so I had to ask, your appearance on Bully Beatdown. Um, what do you remember from it? Because looking back, it's the craziest show like I've ever seen in my life. But I loved it growing up. Like I absolutely ate it up. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I loved watching bullies just literally get beat up. What do you remember? And do you have a sense of admiration almost for the bullies who are getting in the ring, or what? It's the weirdest show ever. So I just had to ask when you look back on it, what do you even think?
At first I wasn't sure what to think of it. I didn't know if it was scripted. I didn't know if they were paying these boys to come through and, get in the cage with the, professional fighter.
Yeah.
But the truth is these bullies were real bullies. And they were so full of themselves that they thought that they could hang with the professional fighter. And it just goes to show you the amount of confidence that they have built throughout the years of the bullies that they've picked on. You know what I mean? And so I think it was just kind of like it was justice, really. They got a taste of their own medicine. And so it was cool. I remember walking in, and we shot in Salt Lake City because I think that was the only state that would sanction a non-professional fighter to fight a professional fighter.
Holy.
And there were rules. We couldn't do any head kicks, elbows, or knees. They got to wear shin guard. They got to wear head protection and all that stuff. But it was just kind of like a little taste of their medicine to hopefully maybe kind of humble them a little bit. And that's what I love about fighting, is you will definitely get humbled. There's always somebody bigger and badder than you, so you better humble yourself. But I remember walking in, and it was actually Bobby Green that was inside the octagon, and I just remember him doubling this guy, picking him up in the air, and slamming him so hard onto the ground that he knocked the wind out of him. And I was like, oh, this is real.
Holy shit.
And it was fun. I think it's a great kind of life lesson, really. And that's what I try to tell people about that all the time. You want to eliminate bullying, make every, kid that grows up do some type of martial arts, because I promise you that the bullying will start to, the percentage of bullying will slow down, because bullies pick on people that they think that they can dominate.
Defenseless, right?
Yeah. And so if they knew in their back of the mind that everybody that they picked on could fight back, they're going to think twice before they start bullying somebody. You know what I mean?
Sure. My last question, and I know we're at the 30-minute mark, I promise.
You're fine.
I'm a movie nerd too. I love action movies, and I know you have an incredible martial arts career and you're a great contender in the UFC, but I am dying to see you star in some action movies here. I know you probably get annoyed when people say that because you have a incredible career still ahead of you, but you also have experience on movie sets. So, one, what do you remember from shooting Thor? Because that is mind-blowing to me, and Marvel nerds are crazy about this stuff. So I have to ask what you remember from those days on set. And then two, what's the kind of movie you would want to do down the road a little bit?
I actually have some really cool opportunities down the pipeline that I'm not able to talk about yet, but I'm super excited about it.
Yes.
And,
yes.
I love being on set, and especially being in my element and being able to do a lot. I've done a lot of stunt work, and I've also had the opportunity to be, the main in a smaller budget like feature film, and that was really cool too because it took me out of my element. Anything that forces me to grow, takes me out of my element, makes me push the limit. I'm totally down for it because I think that's how you grow in life. Is to force yourself to do things you're scared of doing. But being on Thor was cool. I was actually, it was a 1 day shoot. I was on second unit, and funny story. I think at the time I was pregnant, but I didn't know I was pregnant. And the stunt that I was doing, I had a vest on, and so they ratcheted me. I was hooked up to a crane, so they had this hook, and they hooked me, they clipped me in here, and they wrapped me around, and then I had to lay down on the ground. And then they said 3, 2, 1, action, and the crane yanked the vest, and so I went from the ground off the air and went spun, and then bam, hit the ground. And what we were doing was like, the monster comes out the water and hits the girl, and she goes, flying through the air and then hits the ground. That's the stuff that I got to do. It's lots of fun.
Your daughter hasn't seen the movie, right?
Oh, my daughter my daughter is a Marvel freaking maniac. She loves all Marvel. She knows everything about it. She likes to watch the Easter eggs. She knows way more about it than I do. And so I can she's the one that kind of schools me on all that stuff.
Very, very cool. I'm right there with her. So that's awesome. Michelle, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate all this, every single second, every story, every bit of advice. It's all I don't take this for granted in the slightest. Like every single second of this was appreciated. So thank you very much for the time. I hope we can talk again. Rest up, enjoy this time off, but whatever is the next move, the next project, the next mission, I'm ecstatic. I'm excited to see what you do. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the questions. They were great questions, and, made me sit down and think about it a little bit. So I appreciate that.
Very cool. Have a great day, Michelle. I'll talk to you later.
All right. You too.